Yoga Vasistha. Yoga Vasistha. There is a text that has waited many centuries to be heard, patient, recursive, and quietly certain that it will outlast every reader who approaches it. It is attributed to the Sage Valmiki, the same poet revered as the author of the Ramayana, though scholars have long acknowledged that this attribution is more a gesture of reverence than a historical claim. The most honest estimate places its composition somewhere between the 10th and 14th centuries of the Common Era, in the heart of the classical Advaita tradition of India. Its full name is the Yoga Vasistha, sometimes called the Maharamayana, and its purpose can be stated simply. It is a sustained, unflinching attempt to demonstrate that the world you experience is a dream, and that the one you take yourself to be is the dreamer. It accomplishes this not through philosophical argument alone, but through story within story within story, each layer of narrative designed to loosen the reader's grip on the idea that experience is happening to someone separate from it. The text is organized into 6 great books, called Prakaranas: Vairagya on dispassion, Mumukshu on the hunger for liberation, Utpatti on the arising of the world, Esthiti on its persistence, Upashama on its quieting, and Nirvana on the final dissolution of the dream. What follows is that teaching, as it was given by the sage Vasistha to the Prince Rama, rendered here across 12 movements of the narrative, a literary framing that belongs to this retelling rather than to the original architecture, which I mention only so that you carry the text honestly. Listen closely. Phase the first, the melancholy of the prince. Prince Rama returned from his pilgrimage across the Holy Lands, but he did not return as a conquering hero. He was thin, pale, and silent. He sat in the palace like a ghost haunting his own life. He refused the feasts, the music, and the silks. King Dasharatha, terrified, asked the sage Vasistha, "What has happened to my son? Is he possessed by a demon? Has he lost his mind?" Vasistha answered, "He is not possessed, O king. He is awakening. He has contracted the most dangerous disease of all, the sight of truth. He has seen the grave within the grain. He is no longer able to believe in the theatre of the world." Rama stood before the sages and spoke his melancholy openly. "O Master, tell me, what is the use of this life? We are like bubbles on a stream that pop before they can be named. Childhood is a state of helplessness. Youth is a fever of the blood. Old age is the rot of the bone. And death is the only certainty. What is this body that I call me? It is a bag of meat, blood, bile, and waste stretched over a frame of bone. It is the home of microbes and the fuel for the fire. If I strip away the skin, where is the beauty? If I strip away the name, where is the prince?" Wealth is a wandering ghost. It comes to a man like a shadow at noon and leaves him like the sun at dusk. Time is the great executioner. He eats the stars. He eats the gods. He eats the tiny insects. Nothing is too big or too small for the teeth of time. I have seen that pleasure is a masked pain, that possession is a temporary loan, and that identity is a biological hallucination. I no longer want to be an eater in a world where I am eventually the food. I seek the deathless. Phase the second, the hunger for the real. Rama's despair was not met with alarm by all who heard it. The assembled sages recognized in it the unmistakable scent of ripeness. It was into this charged silence that the sage Vasistha himself rose to speak before the gathered court. King Dasharatha had convened this assembly, hoping that the wise men might restore his son to the brightness of ordinary princely ambition. What he received instead was something far older and more difficult, an invitation issued directly to Rama to follow the thread of his despair all the way to its source. Vasistha addressed the prince, and through the prince, every soul in that hall who had ever felt the world grow thin beneath their feet. O Rama, do not be ashamed of what you feel. Your weariness is not weakness. The man who has never asked why must eventually ask it when time has eaten enough of what he loved. You have asked it early. That is your grace. You are a mumukshu, one who is desperate to wake up. A seeker is not born from comfort. He is born from the scorching heat of realization. Despair is the symptom. The hunger for the real is the cure. Vasistha then struck at the first great obstacle, the belief in fate or destiny. There is no such thing as fate, O Rama. Fate is a word used by the weak to justify their failure. What men call destiny is nothing but the momentum of their own past actions. It is a ghost of yesterday haunting today. If fate were the cause of everything, then effort would be useless and the scriptures would be a lie. But we see that effort produces results. Therefore, self-effort is the only reality. You are the architect of your own prison, and you are the only one with the key. To blame fate is to remain a slave. To embrace effort is to claim sovereignty. Vasistha then named the 4 guardians who stand at the gate of liberation. If you master even one, the other 3 will surrender. The first is peace. Peace is the absolute stillness of the mirror. It is the state where the mind is no longer a hunter looking for objects. The man of peace is like a cool lake. He reflects the stars but is not moved by them. The second is inquiry. Inquiry is the surgical needle of the question why. It is the constant, ruthless questioning of the world. Who am I? What is this universe? How did this dream begin? Without inquiry, the mind is just a heap of dry leaves blown by the wind of habit. The third is contentment. Contentment is the fullness of zero. It is the joy that does not come from getting, but from the realization that nothing is lacking. The contented man is a king who has realized that his own being is the only treasure that cannot be stolen. The fourth is the company of the wise. Just as a piece of iron becomes a magnet by staying near a magnet, the mind of the seeker becomes luminous by staying near those who are already awake. Who is fit to hear this teaching? Not the one who is totally ignorant, and not the one who is already free. The instruction is for the one who is drowsy, the one who is beginning to realize he is in a dream but has not yet opened his eyes. Rama is that ripe mind. He has the dispassion to reject the false and the hunger to seek the true. He is standing on the threshold. Phase the third, the architecture of the shadow. Prince Rama asked, "Master, you say the world is unreal, but it stands before me with the weight of mountains and the roar of oceans. How did this massive something emerge from the nothing of the absolute? If Brahman is changeless, how does he produce a universe of constant change?" Vasistha answered, "O Rama, you are asking about the biology of a phantom. The world did not emerge from Brahman as a child emerges from a womb. It appears in Brahman as a mirage appears in the desert sun. The desert does not change to become water. The water is a visual error of the thirsty eye. The universe is a mental vibration that looks like matter. There is no world outside of the mind. The seeing and the creating are the same heartbeat. In a dream, you see a mountain. Does the mountain exist before you see it? Does the mountain exist apart from your awareness of it? No. The moment the mind takes the shape of a mountain thought, the mountain is born. The waking world follows the same law. The hardness of the stone and the distance of the stars are qualities of perception, not properties of matter. The universe is a luminous secretion of your own awareness. You are not in the world is in your gaze. Now a story. There is in this teaching the figure of the crow and the palm fruit. The moment the crow lands on the branch, the fruit falls, and though there is no causal thread between the two events, the mind insists on weaving one. The world is full of such weaving. We see sequence and we call it cause. We see repetition and we call it law. But the world's apparent order is a habit of the total mind, not a property of an independently existing universe. The crow did not knock the fruit loose. The fruit was already falling. The perceiver arrives at the scene and inherits the story. Rama then asked, "If the world is just my thought, why do we all see the same sun?" Vasistha explained the collective dream. Imagine 1,000 people dreaming of the same city. Each sees the city through his own lens, yet the structure is held together by the total mind. But even the creator is only the first ripple in the silence. The cosmic egg from which the worlds hatched is nothing but a primary imagination. Creation is a visual artifact of the mind's vibration. The world has the same density as a rainbow, vivid to the eye, but impossible to lean on. Phase the fourth, the weaver of fables, the story of Layla. Queen Leela loved her husband, King Padma, with a fierce, binding attachment. When he died, her world collapsed. She refused to let his body be burned, keeping it under a heap of flowers, and prayed to the goddess Saraswati for a way to remain by his side. Goddess Saraswati appeared to her, not to resurrect the king, but to perform a correction of vision. She showed Leela that her husband had not gone anywhere, because there is no place to go outside of awareness. To understand what Saraswati showed her, we should pause and hold the full shape of this story, because the canonical telling is far more intricate than any brief summary can honor. Before she was Leela the queen, the soul we are following had lived as a woman named Arundhati, a simple peasant woman devoted to her husband. That life ended, and through the momentum of that devotion, she was reborn as Leela. Again married to a soul she recognized through the dim glass of feeling without quite knowing why. The story is already nested before it begins. She is dreaming of being Layla, while Arundhati sleeps somewhere in the substrate of her own mind. Saraswati took Leela into the space of consciousness. Leela saw her husband as a young king in another world, ruling a new kingdom, holding court in a realm that had its own mountains and ministers and seasons. He had been there for 70 years in the time of that realm. Leela was confused. "Master, my husband died only a few days ago in my palace. How has he been a king in this other land for 70 years? Saraswati answered, "Time is not a universal clock. It is the speed of the thought wave. In the dream of the king, 70 years have passed. In the dream of Leela, only 8 days have passed. Both are happening in the same instant of the absolute. There is no standard time. A man can dream an entire lifetime in the time it takes for a flower to fall to the ground. Leela then discovered something that shattered the geometry she had always trusted. The new kingdom where her husband ruled was not located somewhere distant, past mountains and rivers, in a far country of the cosmos. It was located within her own palace chamber, within a tiny atom of space, the same room where the body still lay beneath its flowers. The mind assumes that big things cannot fit into small things. Vasistha shatters this geometric prejudice. Space is a category of perception, not a property of reality. Just as 1,000 miles seen in a dream occupy no space in the physical bedroom, 1 billion universes can exist within the space of a heart. The vastness of the stars is a magnification of the mind. There is a further twist, and it is the one that makes this story truly vertiginous. The great sage Vasistha himself appears within the story Leela is experiencing. He is there inside the dream world, as a figure within the very teaching he is giving. The teacher and the tale fold into each other. Leela realizes that the Vasistha who instructs her queen self within the inner world is the same principle as the Vasistha who narrates the story to Rama in the outer world, and that neither of these is more or less real than the other. The teaching is not standing outside the dream pointing at it. The teaching is woven through every layer of the dream simultaneously. In her travels, Leela met her own past self, the life of Arundhati visible to her now as though looking at a portrait of someone she had almost forgotten being. She realized she had been a peasant woman, a queen, and something older still beneath that. The self is a serial hallucination. You are not a person with a history. You are the screen upon which the fables of Leela and Padma and Arundhati are being written and erased. By seeing her past selves, Leela realized that her current grief was just a line in a script she had already performed more times than she could count. Time is a flexible vibration of the mind. Space is a mental coordinate without volume. Reality is a collection of overlapping fables. Phase the fifth, the mirror of the multiverse, the story of Indu's sons. There was a Brahmin named Indu who had 10 sons. Desiring the highest power in the universe, these 10 brothers sat in deep meditation, each focusing on a single absolute resolve. I am Brahma, the creator of the universe. This world is my creation. Through the sheer intensity of their will, each brother succeeded. Each became the creator of a universe, complete with its own stars, gods, and billions of living beings. Rama asked, Master, if 10 men each become the creator of the entire universe, how do they not collide? How can 10 everythings exist at once? Vasistha answered, Space is not a container made of distance. It is a capacity of awareness. Just as 1,000 people can dream of 1,000 different cities while sleeping in the same small room, 1 billion universes can occupy the same atom of consciousness. The hardness of one brother's mountain does not block the flow of another brother's river, because both are optical events occurring on different frequencies of the same light. There is no external space to get crowded. The multiverse is a stack of dream layers. You are currently walking through a world that is transparent to 1,000 other worlds you cannot see, simply because your mind is not tuned to their vibration. What you call matter is only the density of your own certainty. A fleeting wish is a soft thought, like a passing cloud. A thought held with absolute, unblinking conviction for eons becomes as hard as a mountain. The 10 suns created solid worlds because their meditation reached the state of total conviction. The stone is not different from the thought of the stone. It is merely a high-frequency hallucination that has become static. Each of the 10 brothers believed himself to be the only creator. Each looked at his universe and said, "I am the one," but the brothers were like mirrors facing each other. The light reflected in all 10 mirrors was the same supreme consciousness. The creation was the reflection. There is no primary world. Every perceiver is a world maker. The many is a mathematical result of the one looking at itself through fragmented lenses. Thought is the only material cause of the universe. Objectivity is just the momentum of a subjective belief. Phase the 6th, the persistence of the dream. Prince Rama asked, "Master, if the world is a subjective secretion of the mind, why does it not vanish the moment I blink? Why is there a shared reality? If I see a tree and 100 other men see the same tree, surely that tree has an independent heart. How can a thought be so durable and so universal?" Vasistha answered, "You are mistaking collective habit for absolute fact. The mirage persists not because it is real, but because the thirst is constant. The world is a long dream held together by the latent impressions of billions of dreamers. It is a shared hallucination, coordinated by the total mind, and sustained by the sheer momentum of our own belief in it. What you call reality is only the density of the past. Every thought you have ever had leaves a scent in the mind stuff. When these scents accumulate for eons, they create a habit of perception so thick that it looks like matter. The thought is a fleeting ripple. The habit is the ripple frozen into a groove. The world is the collection of these grooves, followed blindly by the soul. The world returns after sleep because the scent remains. Just as a man who goes to sleep in a prison wakes up in a prison because the fact of the prison is still in his mind, we wake up to the same sun because our cosmic habit is still vibrating. Vasistha told the story of Shakra, the son of the sage Brig. Shakra was a young man of fierce ascetic resolve, and his father Brig was a sage of formidable power. One day, while Shakra sat in deep meditation, his awareness was seized by the vision of a beautiful celestial woman. His mind followed the vision, helpless as a leaf in a current. Brig, watching his son's concentration shatter, was moved to a drastic action. Through the force of his own spiritual authority, he cursed Shakra and cast his awareness into the body of a stone. Shakra fell into the stone and was sealed there by his father's word. Inside the stone, time moved on a different measure entirely. What passed in the world above as a matter of hours became, within the stone's interior, an almost unimaginable succession of lives. Shakra was born as a man of low station, lived and died, and was born again. He was a king, and then a hunter, and then a bird picking at grain in a dusty courtyard, and then a creeping thing in the dark beneath the roots of a tree. He passed through heavens that shone like banked fires, and through hells that were cold and administrative in their cruelty. He loved and was abandoned and grew old in bodies he had entirely forgotten were borrowed. He accumulated karma and paid it down and accumulated more. Eons folded into eons inside the sealed world of the stone, while outside, Brig waited. When at last Brig lifted the curse and Shakra's awareness returned to his original body, the young man blinked as though waking from a night's sleep. He had no sense of how long he had been gone. The stone sat in the sunlight exactly as it had before, and yet inside that stone, in the space of his own imagination, Shakra had lived what amounted to the entire sweep of a cosmic cycle. Shakra's wanderings prove that the hardness of an experience has nothing to do with its reality. His lives within the stone were as persistent, as detailed, and as painful as your current life. They were sustained by his own mental momentum. You are currently a Shakra, a soul whose awareness has fallen into a particular groove of experience, living out its elaborate inner drama while something in you, deep and patient, waits outside the stone. Rama asked, "But why do we agree on the world? Why do we not all see different dreams?" Vasistha explained, "Imagine 1,000 people who have all been taught the same grammar. Though they speak different sentences, they all obey the same rules of syntax. The total mind is that primary grammar. We see the same sun because we are all reflecting the same universal resolve. The world is a cooperative hallucination. It is like a group of men dreaming they are in a ship. Because they share the same ship thought, they all feel the same sway of the waves. Stability is a property of habit, not of matter. Time expands and contracts according to the intensity of desire. The world is a shared story, sustained by the momentum of the many." Vase the Seventh, the architect of choice. Vasistha continued on the theme of creative resolve. He wanted Rama to understand not merely that the world is imagined, but that imagination is not passive. The mind is a builder. It does not only receive experience, it constructs the very ground on which experience walks. The universe is nothing but the density of resolve. The mind has a whim or an intention. The intention is held with intensity and repetition. The thought wave slows down and becomes objective fact. The hardness of the stone is just the certainty of the mind. If you believe a wall is solid for 1,000 years, it becomes solid. If you believe you are a limited, suffering human for 1,000 births, you become that human. Your life story is a script you have written in the ink of your own resolve. This is not a metaphor for encouragement. It is a description of the actual mechanism of creation. The 10 sons of Indu did not receive their worlds as gifts. They built them cell by cell through the unblinking force of their conviction. You have done the same with this one. Rama asked, "Master, if I am the architect, why did I build a world of suffering? Why would any king choose to be a prisoner?" Vasistha answered, "Most of our building happens in the state of amnesia. You make a choice out of fear or desire. That choice creates a groove. The groove manifests as a circumstance. You forget you made the choice and blame fate. Suffering is the echo of a forgotten decision. You are like a man who draws a monster on a wall and then screams in terror because he forgot he held the charcoal. Wisdom is the act of looking at the charcoal in your own hand." How do we dismantle the prison? Vasistha provided the answer: the abandonment of resolve. To build, hold the thought. To destroy, stop feeding the thought with attention. To be free, realize that you are the space in which the choosing happens, but you are not the choice itself. When the mind becomes free of resolve, the universe has no hooks left. The movie stops because the projector has been turned off. The hard world dissolves back into the luminous silence of the absolute. Matter is a state of mental conviction. Circumstance is the architecture of past resolve. Freedom is the power to stop the creative vibration. Phase the 8th, the anatomy of desire. Prince Rama asked, Master, I see the blueprints. I know the world is my own intent. But why is the intent so restless? Why does the mind run toward objects like a thirsty deer toward a mirage, even when it knows the water is fake? What is this heat that prevents the architect from resting? Vasistha answered, "You are suffering from the fever of latent impressions. The impression is the invisible psychological residue that creates the compulsion to repeat. The mind is like a pot of boiling water. The objects are the bubbles. Desire is the fire beneath the pot. If you want the bubbles to stop, you must not fight the water. You must extinguish the fire. What you call I is nothing but a bundle of habitual glues. You experience a pleasure or a pain. The mind records a scent. The scent demands to be smelled again. The architect then builds a universe specifically to satisfy that scent. The world is a symptom of the trace. You do not see the world as it is. You see the world as your latent impressions require it to be." How do we cool the mind? Vasistha identified two types of abandonment. The first is physical renunciation, leaving the house and the gold. This is shallow. The second is psychological renunciation, leaving the sense of reality in the objects. This is the deeper work. Stop labeling experiences as good or bad, mine or not mine. When the mind stops valuing the dream objects, the fire of desire loses its fuel. Just as a lamp goes out when the oil is exhausted, the world dream grows dim and cool when the oil of attachment is drained. Vasistha told the story of Janaka, the king of Vidha. One day, while walking in his garden, Janaka heard a group of invisible sages singing of the truth. In a flash, he realized that his kingdom, his palace, and his very body were nothing but a passing shadow. Janaka did not run to the forest. He returned to his throne. He ruled the kingdom, but he was cool. He ate the feast, but he was silent. He fought the war, but he was stationary. Janaka achieved living freedom through the quelling of the mind. He remained in the world like a man in a play, performing his lines perfectly while knowing the stage is made of wood and the grief is written in ink. Restlessness is a property of the trace, not the self. Peace is the natural state of the mind when the heat of value is removed. Freedom is possible in the middle of a palace or a battlefield. Phase the 9th, the logic of living freedom. Prince Rama asked, "Master, how does a person live once they have seen through the dream, not the monk in his cave, but the man in the middle of his life, with its obligations and its noise? Is freedom only for those who have been permitted to stop?" Vasistha answered with a portrait rather than a definition. The one who is free does not carry freedom as a possession. He does not hold it carefully like a flame in cupped hands, terrified the wind will take it. Freedom for him is not a state he achieved and must now protect. It is the nature of what he always was, newly recognized. The man who knows he is dreaming does not stop moving through the dream. He dresses in the morning. He speaks to those who address him. He performs the functions of his station. But there is a quality of transparency in all of it, a lightness in the doing, because the doing is no longer weighted with the conviction that it determines who he finally is. The sage acts because the body is a machine that requires movement, but he does not own the movement. The hands, the feet, and the intellect are the instruments. The natural flow of the totality is the impulse, and the thought I am doing this is absent. Actions happen in the presence of the sage, just as light happens in the presence of the sun. The sun does not intend to light the world. it is its nature to shine. The sage performs his duties, fulfills his roles, administers and teaches and tends to what must be tended, and through all of it, he remains the actionless witness. Sovereignty is the capacity to be busy on the outside and stationary on the inside. Rama asked, "Master, if the sage does not choose his actions, who is choosing them? Is he merely carried by events?" Vasistha clarified, there is no separate mover standing behind events, pulling levers. When the small will, the ego, is liquidated, what remains is not vacancy, but the total will of the universe moving through an unobstructed instrument. The small will is friction. The total will is flow. Surrender is not giving up your power. It is trading a candle for the sun. The sage is not a puppet. He is the ocean allowing a single wave, his body, to follow the tide. He has realized that his personal choice was a psychological overlay on a movement that was always already happening. He lives in the palace as if it were a forest, and in the forest as if it were a palace. The sage is undisturbed by the environment because he has realized that the environment is a mental projection. If the mind is noisy, a cave is a prison. If the mind is silent, a throne room is a sanctuary. He performs his part with full attention and zero investment. He wears whatever the play requires, speaks his lines with care and precision, and when the scene ends, he does not remain standing on the stage. He leaves with the same unconcerned naturalness with which the sun sets, neither reluctant nor hurried. Activity does not require an actor. Surrender is the transition from friction to flow. Freedom is the ability to inhabit any role without being captured by it. Phase the 10th, the calculus of nirvana. Prince Rama asked, "Master, I have understood the king in the world and the world in the mind, but my mind still asks, where does the theater go when the lights are turned off? If the world is a dream, what remains when the dreamer wakes up? Is nirvana a state of nothingness, or is it the fullness I have heard described by those who have touched it?" Vasistha answered, "You are asking about the biology of the light. When the dream ends, the mountain does not travel to a new location. It is simply discovered to have never occurred. Nirvana is not a place you enter. It is the extermination of the not-self. It is the silence that remains when the noise of manyness is revealed to be a logical impossibility." Here Vasistha came to the teaching he called Advaita Vedanta, the doctrine of non-origination. It is the most radical thing this text has to say, and it is worth slowing down to hear it clearly. Nothing has ever been created. Nothing has ever been destroyed. There is no beginning to the world and no ending to the world, except in the high-frequency quivering of the mind stuff that imagines both. If Brahman is unchanging, he cannot produce a changing world. If Brahman is one, he cannot produce a many. Therefore the many is a zero moment. It is a vivid non-event. The universe does not arise from the absolute. It appears to arise within a mind that has forgotten the absolute. And the moment the mind remembers, the appearance loses its power to compel, though it may continue to appear. The world is void because it has no independent heart. The world is full because its only substance is the absolute. These two statements are not in tension. They are the same statement seen from different angles. Emptiness and fullness are not opposites here. The world is empty of independent existence and therefore full of the only existence there is. When you realize the world is void of matter, you find it is full of awareness. Nirvana is the state where this realization is no longer an intellectual position, but the only thing that is obviously true. Sovereignty is the capacity to walk through the world dream while knowing with absolute certainty, this is not happening as I thought it was. The universe is not abolished by this knowledge. It continues to present itself, but its edges have changed. It no longer has the authority of the independently real. It is seen for what it is, a shimmer in consciousness, vivid and intricate, and ultimately without weight. In nirvana, the waker realizes he was the dreamer, and the dreamer realizes he was the sleeper, and all three realize they are the unblinking fourth. The waking state, the dream, the deep sleep, and the turiya, the witness that underlies all three, have always been present together. Nirvana is the recognition of what was already the case. Extinction is only for the false. Presence is the only survivor of the fire. The world is a luminous shadow with zero density. Phase the 11th, the behavior of the unbound. Prince Rama asked, "Master, if the world is a non-event and the ego is a ghost, how does the sage continue to breathe? If he has realized that he is the infinite, why does he still answer to a name? Why does he eat? Why does he sleep? And why does he act in a world he knows to be a mirage?" Vasistha answered, "You are looking at the uniform, but you have forgotten the soldier. The sage is like a pot moving through space. Does the space move when the pot is carried? No, the body is the pot, awareness is the space. The sage inhabits his own personality as a traveler inhabits a rented room. He knows the lease has expired, but he remains until the sun sets, watching the shadows lengthen with a cool, unblinking eye. The body of the sage persists because of the momentum of the past. It is like a potter's wheel that continues to spin even after the stick has been removed. There is no new wanting to drive the wheel, only the old energy finishing its circle. The sage is a dry leaf in the wind of destiny. He does not resist the wind. He does not seek the wind. He goes where he is blown, into a palace or into a gutter, with the same weightless indifference. He has realized that the wind and the leaf are both ripples in his own shoreless being. He is busy on the outside, but stationary on the inside. He is a warrior in the battle, yet he is a monk in the heart. He does what must be done as it comes, without the fever of I am the doer. His actions are spontaneous and transparent. He treats the grief of the world as a line in a play and the joy of the world as a glint on a bubble. For the sage, the universe is no longer a prison. It has become a Layla, a playful shimmer of the absolute. Imagine a man watching a magic show. The ignorant man is terrified when the magician saws the woman in half. The sage watches with the same eyes, but he is smiling, for he sees the hidden partition. The world is the saw. The person is the woman. The sage sees the partition of awareness that keeps the truth whole even while the body is sliced by time. He enjoys the trick, but he is never the victim of it. Activity does not require an actor. Persistence is a mechanical echo, not a spiritual fact. Freedom is the end of the preference ego. Phase the 12th, the sovereign silence. The sage Vasistha fell silent. The thousands of stories had been told. The infinite logic had been applied. He looked at Prince Rama and remained still. The entire court of King Dasharatha sat in a profound, unmoving silence. For a long time, Rama did not speak. His eyes were open, yet they did not seem to be looking at the walls or the people. He was like a portrait of a man or a flame in a windless place. Rama finally spoke, his voice sounding like the wind through an empty canyon. Master, there is no more world to be seen, and there is no more self to be found. The very idea of a path was the last ghost of the dream. I am not liberated, for I was never bound. I am not awake, for I never slept. There is only the shoreless radiance that neither rises nor sets. If you think you are free, you are still remembering the prison. If you think you are one, you are still calculating the many. True sovereignty is the dissolution of the equation. The grammar of the dream was a medicine used to cure the fever of duality. Now that the fever is gone, the medicine is discarded. The master and the instruction are seen for what they were, vibrations in the void meant to lead the mind back to its own source. Rama looked at the assembly and said, I see the king, I see the sages, and I see the palace, but they no longer have the hardness of matter. They are like the shimmer of heat over a desert, or like the colors of a rainbow in the spray of a waterfall. They are vivid, they are beautiful, but they are empty of independent blood. The world does not vanish physically, it becomes ontologically transparent. The sage does not close his eyes to find the absolute. He keeps his eyes open and sees the absolute wearing the mask of the world. I am the space in which the universes rise and fall. I am the light that allows the darkness to be known. I am the silence that remains when the song is over. The kingdom is not a territory I rule. I am the ground of the territory. I am the awareness that allows the very concepts of king and kingdom to exist. I no longer play a part in the story. I am the paper on which the story is written. I am the unnegatable residue. I, Vasistha, have spoken, the prince has woken up, the grammar is finished, the dream is understood, it was a vibration of the mind, the shadow is executed, it never had a heart, the silence is established, it is the only fact, the king is home. Here ends the Yoga Vasistha.